Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for this week's Friday Morning GM with co-host Vas Laricos. Vas, how you doing?
Very good, Ken. Very well. Looking forward to doing the show with you this week, continuing through the offseason. Going to be an exciting offseason with the Bills firing McDermott. The average tenure of head coaches in the AFC next season, 2.1 years. That's
Wow.
pretty, and that includes Reed bringing that average way up. The second longest tenured is Taylor in Cincinnati at 6 years.
Huh.
And then it's all couple 3-year guys, couple second-year guys, first-year guys, and 7 zeros.
You got McDermott and Tomlin and Harbaugh obviously changing teams or leaving are obviously big deals. All right. Well, the Harbaugh move has a big wake to it in terms of what will happen. And I want to talk about the coaching first, because apparently Harbaugh put in a request, or the Giants put in a request for about 24 people from a wide range of departments. And some of them are coaches, but there's also administrative staff and presumably there'd be other people from scouting and whatnot. So what's your guess as to how that process played out in New York before they got that list?
I think Harbaugh wrote down a list of the folks that he wanted to bring with him. Apparently he's already demoted, I think, their strength conditioning longtime trainer, who has been there since the 80s, and he's made a lot of moves. I mean, they're giving him a lot of power. Obviously, that was the sticking point, and obviously he's going to use that power to create what he wants. You don't think about how big of an operation a football team is, and I was looking at it yesterday. I looked at the Ravens website and all the different players they have listed people they have listed for the coaching and the front office. There's over 25 departments that they have listed on their website. And there's
about 150 people. What are we talking about?
I mean, I didn't add it up, but to me, off the cuff, I would say probably 150 might be a pretty good estimation. So yeah, it's a big undertaking for this new coach to come in and not only fill out his coaching staff, but the strength and conditioning department, which apparently the players want to retain as many as they can, the analytics. Most of the front office people you think are loyal to DaCosta, but time will tell.
Yeah, so the Ravens did as part of this refuse requests for a couple of people. Chris Horton is not available for lateral moves, so that's an interesting one. So they're apparently, and they're probably telling the head coaches involved that they want Chris Horton as the special teams coordinator going forward.
I interpreted that as they want to give the coach the option to interview him at least, right? Because that's sort of the silo style where you let the coach have final say. I did also hear or read from Jeff Zarebek that some of the other coaches they blocked for lateral moves, at least in the interim, are some of the younger defensive assistants.
Okay. Randy Brown is also in that group. Apparently they want him interviewed by the new coach. So he's not a younger guy, but he's one of the Ravens' really good coaches that
valuable.
Willie Taggart apparently has already moved off to go with Harbs, the running backs coach, and he also has the assistant head coach tag. So it's something that Rosberg and some other people have had over the years.
As a Florida State fan, see what he did with our program, I'm kind of happy to see him go and follow John. I thought I saw that he was going to be interviewed for the offensive coordinator place with the Giants. So apparently Monken, it's not a done deal with Monken, and Monken apparently is one of the front runners in Cleveland. Yeah. It's a fluid situation with a lot of these coaches at this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing that all over the league. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the Ravens, are luckily have a first world opportunity. They can afford to be a little bit more patient with their search. In some ways, they have to be, because some of the candidates they want are still in the playoffs right now, and they have to wait to the interview. Apparently, there will be an opportunity after the championship game, but before the Super Bowl. But that.
Because of the 2 weeks, there's 2 weeks between. Is it always every 2 weeks? I know they've changed that back and forth.
It's always been 2 weeks, and unless it might have been for 2001 when they had 9/11 and games got canceled, it might have been only 1 week.
I mean, it's a challenge. Obviously the coordinators on the teams that make the Final Four are oftentimes the most attractive options. I know there's a lot of worrying in the Ravens fan base yesterday. I noticed that online, especially. You have to trust the process. DaCosta and Bisciotti said you have to give at least 4 or 5 guys, second interviews. You're not going to blow that up because and totally go in a different direction because of what some other team's doing. I think you have to trust your own process.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I'd like to know who they have tagged for a second interview, but the Ravens aren't announcing that in advance. They're just, Joe Brady is in today, for example, and they didn't tell anybody in advance about that second interview, as far as I know.
No, I saw that they had Brady over the weekend. I think that I saw a note of that. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of different, there's so many different national insiders, and there's 5 or 6 of them competing, and who's talking to what agent, and there's a lot of different moving parts right now.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Now, one thing we wanted to do to kind of tie together the Harbaugh wake was look at some of the Ravens UFAs and which of those are most at risk. Now, obviously, we've already had this issue with the Jets and Joe Douglas, certainly with Jim Harbaugh taking a number of ex-Ravens with him. And so we've got a Ravens North, another Ravens North 2 now, and we'll have a Ravens West still that we've had.
The Chargers, yeah.
Yeah. So this is, Ravens have a lot of free agents. There are some high value names on the list, and there are some other guys who they probably would like to compete on for mid-range salaries that may be difficult to retain. But let's go through the list one name at a time. Who would you like to start with? I'll bring one name at a time each way.
Well, let me just set the table if I can real quick. First, it's very normal for players to follow the coach. John Harbaugh wants to have some of those guys in his locker room to carry out his message. So it's very normal. And I think it could actually benefit the Ravens. The Giants might overpay for intangibles and helps the Ravens in the comp pick game. But let's start with the elephant in the room, Tyler Linderbaum. Ken, where do you sit there?
So I think you and I have maybe similar, but maybe a little bit different points on the scale here. Both of okay, I'm just going to speak for myself. Tyler Linderbaum is not a particularly good pass blocker. He's in the middle of the league. It's the more important characteristic. He's a run blocker. He's right at the top of the league among run blockers in the entire NFL. But that means his combined ability is not at the very top. As such, I can't see paying him any more than what Creed Humphrey is making right now, and that's even on an inflation-adjusted basis. So the absolute top I would go, and I think it would be a slight overpayment, would be 18, maybe 18.5 million per year AAV, and even that is really stretching it. The Ravens would be doing it for 2 major reasons. One would be need, because they're wrecked on the interior offensive line right now, and the other would be to make Lamar happy. And I'm okay with that kind of an expenditure, but it is an overpay. At really at 16 million, it's probably on the money or even a slight overpay. But what's your number?
So, a couple thoughts. I mean, do we know that Lamar is an advocate of Linderbaum? For sure. I'm not positive about that. Second thought is I'm not sure the Giants are going to be able to outbid the Ravens. They only have $1 million in cap space right now. The Ravens have more cap space than they do. But the third thought, and this is going to be kind of my guiding principle throughout the offseason, just been doing some macro level thinking on where this team should go. And I've noticed a trend. There's been several trends, but as far as the postseason underperformance and the big game underperformance, they're losing in the trenches. And I remember about 15 or 20 years ago reading a book from Nestor Aparicio that was called The Diary of a Ravens Maniac, I believe. And there was one particular passage where he was interviewing Ozzie Newsome. And Ozzie Newsome made a comment that you can make exceptions for players that don't meet the measurable criteria once in a while. But if you look on the field and your team is small and your team is slow, that's on you as a general manager. Right. So I want the Ravens to get a little bit more size. They become a little bit more of a finesse team. Most of the guys, a lot of their recent draft picks have been on the smaller end of the RAS. And I want a larger player there. So I would give Linderbaum a courtesy offer of $12 million, and that'd be my top dollar.
I don't think you need to make the courtesy offer that low. I don't think if this is like, okay, let's talk about this in terms of auction mentality. You're not really concerned about putting an offer out there that's too good if you put out 15 million, because there's teams all over the league who want Linderbaum as their center. I mean, it's not going to be a problem for him to do much better than that. I think they could be making a mistake but I'll give him as attractive a support offer as I possibly think will be not something he would take. In the case of Linderbaum, though, I'd be thrilled to get him at 15 million. So
Okay.
if that were the case, then I can't see the support level being any lower than that, and that should allow him to a really good starting point. I don't even think he needs it, honestly. I think
Okay.
his agent is probably talking these other terms and saying, look, the asking price is going to be 20.5 million, whatever it be. It has to reset the contract, reset the league, and he may get kind of backhanded with a high starting position like that in terms of what the general managers in the league tell him. But we'll see.
I just think if you I don't want cornerstone contracts of players that are deficient in that certain area,
Yeah.
and if you're going to say that, take that money that you could put towards Linderbaum and pay a guard, or you might be able to pay a veteran guard and a center for the same as one Linderbaum. So, yep. Who do you want to go to next?
So my next guy, let's go to Patrick Ricard, because I think there's a real chance of losing him. Now, I have not looked at exactly what the Giants cap situation is, but my guess is, as a team that has not been really performing very well, that they probably have a lot of mutable cap space where they just haven't done it yet. They haven't cleared it yet by creating void years and doing the other things they need to restructure, simple restructures to create money for 2025. But Patrick Ricard is a player that I'd be very concerned. John Harbaugh is going to fall in love with Scatabo and Ricard being in the same backfield, and they could easily be a pairing. The Ravens have a simple friction there. They can pay him veterans VSB money and have them make almost $3 million for the cost of roughly 1.5. So they have that, but I would not surprise me if Harbaugh says, "Go get Ricard, 2 years, $7 million, and we'll build our run game around that."
Yeah, if that's what's on the table, then I'm happy to let Pat walk as well as he's done. I would go up to the VSB. That would be my top dollar. He's getting older. He missed part of the season. They have Lucas Scott on the practice squad, and apparently it's a pretty good crop of fullbacks coming out. I think there's a guy from Georgia named Delp. Somebody pointed out to me. And there's only 7 or 8 teams competing for those fullbacks. So I don't think the Ravens will never have. I mean, they have a long, long track record of fullback play. If the new coordinator even wants a fullback, I think they'll be able to find somebody very good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, by the way, on that. And the Ravens' long history of great fullback play was all a bunch of 1 and 2 year contracts. I mean, none of them were along for very long before Ricard came along. So
Leach might be the only one that got a 3-year deal. I really like Sam Gash. Jason put up something about him last week and reminded me. But anyway, yeah.
Good players.
All right, let's go to Isaiah Likely, another big one. Ken, I'll have your thoughts first, and then I'll respond if it's okay.
Sure. Kind of an unknown in terms of exactly what his market value is going to be this offseason. Didn't play a lot. Didn't get nearly the target share that was expected out of him. The Ravens tight end play in general was way down this year in terms of the passer rating throwing to him was down from 143.5 to 90.1 this year, which is about as big a hit as you can take. And that was a 2-year period before. So it had been extremely good for 2 years with 30 touchdowns and 1 interception. So Likely, I love the fact that he showed up at the biggest time of the year to make a big play against the Steelers. I think he will still be good if he's alone in the offense. I'd have rather had him for Andrews. I'd have certainly given him the same money that Andrews got and had Likely play under that contract. I just don't know what his expectations are. So I'm sure they've had these talks, but they probably Likely refused their 14. Apparently, maybe it went up to 16. Is what he wants is 16.5 or 17. The Ravens aren't willing to pay it. I understand. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, if the only way I could see him coming back to the Ravens is on a 1-year prove it, where he's trying to elevate his market value for the next season, and his greatest asset is his connection with Lamar on those improv plays where he can just go up and get the ball. He had that huge play. I think it was against the Bengals on the Lamar where he stiff-armed the guy in the 24 season in the end zone. That was one of the plays of the year. Not consistent enough this year, obviously. And you can't pay 2 tight ends big money. It's going to cause other issues in the roster that you can't afford. So I would have preferred Likely, but now that you have Andrews, which is probably going to end up being maybe not a great contract that you can get out of in 1 more year, I just can't. I can't see paying up. Now, will he want to go to the Giants? It doesn't seem like likely he's necessarily a Harbaugh kind of guy either.
Well, we've heard some of the stories that occurred since Harbaugh's firing that likely might have had a party. That's one rumor I heard. I don't know if I really
I didn't
believe it
hear
or not. Yeah,
that.
I don't know if I really believe it or not. But whatever the case, Isaiah Likely, I think Harbaugh probably likes Isaiah Likely the player, and if there are multiple bidders out there, or if there aren't multiple bidders out there, I think that the Giants are a reasonable place that he could end up. I do think there will be multiple bidders for Isaiah Likely though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too.
All right. How about Chidobe Awuzie is a guy that I'm really concerned about losing because he's a mid-level guy. The Ravens don't have a lot of cornerback depth. What they have is older, and that would include Awuzie. But Awuzie was such a bargain on this last year. Asking DaCosta to do that every year, and he did it with Ronald Darby in 23, did it with Awuzie in 25, is a really difficult ask.
Yeah, when you look at the quarterback room, you have Nate Wiggins on one side, and then you don't know really what else you have. You have a couple options maybe in the slot, whether that's an option. Who knows what Marlon Humphrey's future holds? But what was the Keon Martin also played pretty well there. You don't have. I mean, you don't know what you have in TJ Tampa. You definitely don't know what you have in the two injured drafted players last year. So you probably need a veteran and a relatively high draft pick at cornerback. And Awuzie would be the guy that I would be upset if Harbaugh poached from. I guess not poached because he's not under contract, but if he bid the Ravens up so where they wouldn't match it, I think he's probably worth about $6 or $7 million. I'd be on a 1-year deal. I don't think you want to lock into Awuzie for multi years considering his age and injury history. But that would be, out of all the names we've discussed so far, that'd be the one that I really try to keep.
Aggressive support offer there, so you could go.
Yep.
You could go 2 years, $10 million would be something he could start with and take to the market. Yeah.
I mean, that's about what Darby got, right? And I think the Darby's a pretty good comp to Awuzie based off of the season he had here. And then he went to Jacksonville, and I don't think he even saw the second year of that deal. But it was somewhere, it might have been 212, something like that.
Okay.
Let's go to Ardarius Washington.
Well, I love Ardarius, and I think he's an extra guy who brings you a lot of versatility. If you're talking about how can you make sure you're not short on safeties and also fill another role, Ardarius is a great guy to have on the team. Slot corners / strong or free safety, really, but has some weaknesses playing safety in terms of the tackling, but at least going downhill, he's a very physical player, very effective there. Amazing that he returned to the field. He clearly wanted to rehab quickly through this, which was great. And I don't know if he's really going to be interested in a prove-it deal is the unfortunate thing. I think Harbaugh may have some draw on him on a prove-it deal with the Giants. That would be great here because the Ravens, frankly, with Kyle Hamilton at slot, are taking away a big potential responsibility for him. So they'll sign him. He'll be part of their safety core, part of their slot cornerback group, and I'll probably see significant playing time, but he won't be, a day one starter necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, he's a end of the roster kind of guy in either situation. I don't want to put too many more assets in the safety. If you're moving Marlon Humphrey to safety and Kyle Hamilton's the highest paid safety and you have a first round pick at safety, I think if Marlon moves to safety, he has to they really have to press him for a pay cut, 30% or something.
Right.
But that's a different for a different episode. Ardarius, I think they give him a solid, role player offer, couple million. And if Harbaugh wants to and the Giants want to take him, then go for it. And Keon Martin can help out in slot when they need him there too.
I don't know if we discussed this last week or if I discussed it with somebody else, maybe on the Marlon Humphrey episode. But the thing I talked about was giving him the VSB money if your card leaves. So if you have your next fullback figured out, Ardarius is one of the players who qualifies for it. And so you could give him the same money that Ricard got and have him make approximately $3 million that only costs you the vet minimum against the cap.
Sure. I'd be in favor of that. I mean, he does have value, like you said, especially in dime. That would really be his value.
All right, my turn. Let's go to, this is a lesser name, but let's go to Jake Hummel. The reason I think he's a big risk is because Harbaugh obviously has an affinity for special teams. I think he would make Hummel promises in terms of being the captain or being the leader of the special teams unit with the Giants. I think, Harbaugh's, passed ability, and the Ravens, frankly, franchise ability to make use of players that have a defensive role plus also play special teams has been very good.
Mhm.
Albert McClellan, Anthony Levine, all those guys had significant defensive roles in addition to a huge special teams footprint. I think Hummel fits that bill.
Yeah, I'd be happy to bring him back, but I'm certainly not going to overpay for Hummel. The Ravens do have some other special teamers that could, like Keandre Jackson.
Mhm.
He could be the captain of special teams hypothetically. He brings
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of energy and made a lot of plays. So, uh, a lot of times I don't want to bring back the special, like Chris Board. I was not enamored with his contributions on defense or special teams. Jake Hummel actually did make some plays on special teams, so I'd be happy to have him back, but definitely not more than the vet minimum or very slightly above the vet minimum.
Okay, so vet minimum. If you sign him for 2 years, would you vet minimum plus 400,000 over 2 years, kind of Anthony Levine style contract?
Yeah,
Would that be okay? Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
I'd go for that. Let's go. We haven't done Draymond yet, have we? Draymond Jones.
Don't think so.
So I'm not sure if he's Harbaugh's kind of guy. He didn't have the longest track record, half a season with Harbaugh, and the Giants do have probably the strength of their team is the edge rush.
Mhm.
But he's a player that I'm hoping the Ravens find a way to keep. Whether if they can get him for under 10 million on a 2 or 3 year deal, and he could be, outside linebacker 1A hypothetically, and you still have to add one either early in the draft or somewhere else to get to your 4. But he's a player that I think his ability to kick inside helps you out as far as not needing a penetrating defensive lineman quite as much because he does have that ability.
So you've got Robinson and Draymond, if he returns, would be 2 guys who can kick inside. You can actually play race car
Mm-hmm.
with your group then. Mike Green, you hope, develops into the pass rusher. It's really got to be this year. David Ajabo, I think we'll both agree, is gone. You draft somebody to be your 4th.
Yep.
Is that really enough? Or do you really need even another, maybe a vet pickup too, a vet min guy like a hey, Clowney and Van Noy have each been that guy in the past, and it's really
Right.
worked out. So
Depends where you draft it. If you draft an outside linebacker at 14, you probably don't. If you draft an outside backer in the 5th round, you probably do.
okay,
So that's what
I'm
I
with
would
you.
say. Yep. Couple other guys I thought too. Speaking of Van Noy, I mean, he certainly fits the prototype of what Harbaugh looks for in the locker room. I don't think they have I don't think outside linebacker is a big need for them, but somebody that I think does sort of suit Harbaugh's culture like a glove is Alohi Gilman, a guy that worked his way up on special teams and became a strong safety type.
I'm okay with that, and I don't think Alohi is an ideal player for the Ravens system. They used him at free safety over Starks at the end of the year, which is kind of bothersome in
Mhm.
the base package. It's fairly limited usage. I mean, Starks still played 98.2% of the snaps. So I don't have a problem
Mhm.
with that. But it's a little weird that Starks is losing snaps to Alohi freaking Gilman at the end of the
Right.
year. And Gilman had a big tackling problem. So the Ravens can afford to have one of those back there. They can't really afford to have 2. So Marlon, if they're gonna keep Marlon, then I think he's the guy that they would use in that role. And I think money wise, particularly if they got any kind of a concession, like let's say he's scheduled to make roughly $7 million this year. The $7 million is a cap savings. It's not absolutely correct. But if you could cut his salary by 2 or 3 million and give it back to him in incentives if he hits them,
Mhm.
then I think you'd be in a good position to move him to safety and not feel like you're wasting a lot more money than you could have Gilman for. Now, maybe there's no suitors for Gilman. Obviously, after he played with the way did with the Ravens and missed so many tackles, I think it's possible there's just not a market out there for him. We've seen that with the safety markets the last couple of years, where it's
Right.
been really light.
Yep. That's a good point. Quite a few guys we thought had good pedigree that sat out there on the market for a while at safety.
Yeah.
Tylan Wallace, I think if there's one player, I would say he's the most likely out of anybody to follow John to the Giants. I think Harbaugh wants him in the locker room and on special teams. And, he was inactive towards down the stretch of
Yeah.
the season, even under Harbaugh. And I think you want to get younger there and more explosive at receiver from a Ravens perspective.
With you entirely. And Wallace had that great year, earned a couple bucks from the Ravens in 25, and he earned that money. Happy that he got it, but he lost time to Tez Walker, and frankly, that's a good thing for the Ravens. It's a good thing that your young, up and coming fourth round pick is playing better than your fifth year fourth round pick, who you have no tie to his future. So I hope we see from day one a lot more usage of Walker in 26. I mean, I really liked what we saw this year, so I have no problem with Wallace moving on.
Two more. One that I would not be upset if he moved on. One that I hope the Ravens are keeping, Daniel Faalele and Jordan Stout.
So you don't want Daniel Faalele to move on, and you're okay with Jordan Stout moving.
Exactly. Okay. Cornerstone contract for Dan.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with Stout. Both of us want to keep Stout because he is one of the better punters in the league, and he's also one of the better holders in the league, which I think is probably the more important responsibility of a punter in today's game. So we have that. So I would give him a long-term contract commensurate with other long-term contracts given to punters in the past. Not maybe the top of the Sam Cook in a relative percentage of cap basis, but pretty close to that, I would say.
AP1. I mean, he's AP1 punter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So excited about that. Excited they finally got a guy that was not an overdraft where they picked him, given how it's worked out. Although a lot of people had complaints for the first couple of years, certainly about what was going on. He just the holding thing is critically important, and I don't think we exactly knew how much of the problem was Tucker in decline for 3 years, as opposed to how much was Stout. And now it appears that we now know which cylinder wasn't firing, because he had a very good year with Loop in terms of holding the ball. But anyway, I'm good on keeping him. Daniel Faalele, I'll bring him back at some price, and the Ravens are so lost on the interior line. If he comes back for the vet minimum, sure. If he comes back for 1 year, $2.5 million, just because he doesn't have really a good offer out there, and the Ravens really want to back up, I'm actually okay with that too. And I'd be okay with him not playing at that price. The Ravens have done that before.
I could see him going to the Chargers. Apparently, Jim is the one that found him in New Zealand way back when he was a teenager.
Right.
And that's how he first. Yeah, and they need help on the. I think Faalele needs a fresh start, just from a personal level.
Agree.
So much acrimony. But again, just to put a button on it, if the Giants are willing to pay up for some of these players that were on the Ravens, specifically for their intangibles that they're going to bring to the locker room, that benefits the Ravens in the compensatory formula.
Yeah, it benefits them. It also could prevent them from overpaying for a player if they get outbid. And I think that's probably most present with Linderbaum of all the players. It could be present with a player like Ricard, or likely as well, potentially. Probably not likely because they've already got a signing made there. We didn't really talk about Charlie Kolar either, but he is a player I'd like to keep, and definitely one that Harbaugh may want to take with him as an inline guy. Has not gotten much of a chance as a receiver, and I have no idea what his market is going to look like because of that.
I'd like to keep Charlie if you can keep him for about 6, 7, 8 per year on a 3-year deal. He can be your tight end 2. You can get out. You draft the tight end 3 in the 5th round this coming year. So you have Andrews, Kolar, and a rookie. Then if Mark continues his regression, Charlie can be the bridge to the new tight end, and you draft the tight end higher in the 27 draft to replace Mark.
Okay, I'm with you. So a 2-year stage, 2 in, 1 out on that, I'd be fine with.
You stagger the departures that way too a little bit.
Hey, yeah, as if why would we ever care about staggered departures if a tight end? It's just, for those of you who have been listening to the show, all 4 of these contracts came due at the same time, which has been one of the things we've been very frustrated about for quite a while. All right, let's move on to the coaching search here. We've already spent way too long on this particular topic. We'll go through the list of 17, because there are now 17 guys the Ravens have had a first interview with, and I think some of these, all of these they've had first interviews with. There's no longer just a scheduled first interview.
The special teams guy from Denver, I think he's the only one that didn't have his first interview.
He didn't have his first yet. Rizzi. Okay,
that's the only one.
Okay,
the other 16 or 17 or whatever have.
Okay, so let's start with the guys who've already been ruled out of the process. So really quickly, Kevin Stefanski's gone to Atlanta. Don't have to worry about him. He wasn't on my list of 5. He wasn't on yours either, correct?
No.
Okay. Number 2, Mike McDaniel. Would have loved to have him as the OC. He's already gone to the LA Chargers as the OC, which is unfortunate. That's a potential loss there.
There's a little bit of ambiguity to that one. It's sort of like the Brian Flores as well, where he's agreed, but he hasn't put pen to paper. And if somebody were to come back and say, no, we want you to be our head coach, at least the way I'm reading the reports, McDaniel still could be an option there. But if he does, I would assume that he's already come to agreement that he's out of the running for offensive coordinator.
Okay. So, right. So if he became available, then he would not be available as an offensive coordinator, only as a head coach. And it looks to me like the Ravens, with these in-person interviews that they've now started, are really looking for who are your guys out of these guys who are coming in as they would. Anyway, one of the other guys that I thought would be a reasonable CEO head coach is Robert Saleh. And he's gone, of course, to the Titans. We talked about him. I think he was on both our lists, right? He's on mine.
Yes, he was. He was, okay. I think, 4th or 5th on mine. Yep.
Okay. So, those guys are no longer in the running. Now, there's a bunch of guys who are not yet interviewable. I want to go through those really quickly as well. So we have, and I'm sure you'll catch me where I don't. Vance Joseph, they can't have a second interview with because the Broncos are still in the playoffs. Davis Webb, the Broncos QB coach, who would be a really outstanding offensive coordinator candidate or potential offensive coordinator candidate, and very young, is still in the playoffs, of course. Clint Kubiak, one of my top 5 on your list too, right?
Yes, number 1 on my list.
Number 1 on your list. I think that there are a lot of reasons why the Ravens might want him. Is the Seahawks OC and still in the playoffs, obviously, and so that'll be a while potentially before they can have that interview. We have who else is still not available currently?
You have
Chris Shula.
Yes, Shula and Shielhaas.
Okay, those are the 2. And we didn't, and Darren Rizzi, who we didn't mention. So I guess there's 6 guys still that are still in the playoffs, which is it's not surprising that those are the hottest coordinators a lot of the time, or the hottest coaches for moving up into coordinator roles. But it makes it difficult to give these guys a real good chance if you want to move quickly.
Yeah, it does. But, patience pays off sometimes, right? As Eric DeCosta said, Seahawks waited for Mike McDonald, and look how well that's paid off for them. I just don't, as big of a decision as this is, after 18 years of one coach and all the different facets of the job, you can't rush it just for, go through the process. Go through the process
I'm with
as you intended. Yeah, I know you are. Yeah. I'm talking to some of the impatient fans, not you.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, with the teams that are playing the impatient game are trying to create a prisoner's dilemma problem for the coaches that are out there. So it's like, if you there's only gonna be one deal, this is a classic prisoner's dilemma. It's a you got 2 different suspects that you think have perpetrated a crime together. They're in different interview rooms, and you're trying to get both of them basically to plead guilty and not have to make a deal with one to turn in the other. And since both are incented to do that, and they get off free, whereas the other guy and the loser gets 20 years, or they both get 1 year in jail. They're both incented to basically take their 1 year sentence and be done with it. And that's what's going on with a lot of this. I think they're taking lesser jobs than they could get with the Ravens because they're in fear of getting nothing.
I also think they probably have some indication of how serious the Ravens are interested. Apparently, the Ravens were unimpressed by Saleh's video interview, or I forget, was that in person? Yeah, either way,
he didn't have a second.
Well, it could have been in person, the first one, because he wasn't employed. Okay. But the Ravens have the very best job, and it's not to go backwards, but you see the Buffalo Bills owner on the microphone, and it's what a stark contrast from what Steve Bisciotti is, and they both have MVP quarterbacks, Buffalo and Baltimore. The Ravens have a first-class owner, and they also have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. How can you tell me the Buffalo's a better job? There's no chance.
I mean, and Buffalo has a third world owner. I mean, he's
Right.
an awful thing to do. I mean, just the most obvious thing, and fans complain about it sometimes when coaches just give you coach speak about a player. There's a
Hmm.
reason for it. You don't throw players under the bus until you're absolutely ready to dump them for nothing. But
Even
what every day, companies you've never heard of are making millions off your personal data. Your name, address, phone number, even details about your family are pulled from public records on the internet, then sold without your consent. There's an entire marketplace built on your privacy, and most people have no idea it exists. Aura fights back. Aura removes your personal data from broker sites and keeps it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just a data broker removal system. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your online life. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager for safer logins, and spam call protection to shut down scammers. Aura scans the dark web for your most sensitive information and notifies you instantly if anything is exposed. And if your identity is ever stolen, you're backed by up to $5 billion in insurance and 24/7 US based fraud support. Other service charges about the same, but only cover one or two areas. Aura gives you everything: data broker removal, identity and credit monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all in one simple app. Aura removes what's already exposed, protects what's not, and puts you back in control. Go to aura.com/remove for complete digital protection and peace of mind. That's aura.com/remove.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code Ravens. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code Ravens at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
Yeah, finish it.
Yeah, what Pergola did in this case was to not only make Keon Coleman, who's a first-round draft pick, he's been disappointing, completely uninterested in ever playing another game in the Bills uniform.
Yep.
He also reduced his trade value in the same breath.
Exactly.
It was a freaking slam dunk double.
Exactly. And San Fran, John Lynch just did the same thing with Brandon Ayuk and said, he's not going to play in our uniform anymore. We just reduced his trade value. Why'd you say that? You just signed him. You owe him a ton of money. Now you're not going to be able to trade him either. I don't know. The more we see from other organizations, the more thankful I am to be a Baltimore Ravens fan under the ownership of Steve Bisciotti.
So it did come up online, and it might even be one of the questions we have, but it definitely came up. Yeah, well, it came up online, I'll just say, is what would you offer for Keon Coleman right now? If you're the Baltimore Ravens and you think, I could use a receiver, Keon Coleman's going to make $3.9 million of salary over the next 2 years, which is not much. Would you be interested in acquiring a player like that?
I would. He's a ball winner. And that's what Daniel Jeremiah has been saying over the last couple of weeks. You guys are going to win the ball in the playoffs. We saw that with Anquan Bolden, how strong hands and being able to go up for the ball is so valuable when those windows get tight. So, yeah, I'd offer, let's see, he has 2 more years left. Late third, early fourth. I'd go that high. I'm high on him, though, but he played for my college team. So, and I had a big grade on him coming out.
All right, so I wouldn't go that high because he only got 2 years left on his rookie deal, and he's a damaged goods right now. I don't think we're taking advantage of the Bills to the degree necessary if we give him that much. I think a 5th round pick is the proper number, and it might be lower. Frankly, I got into the discussion and somebody basically suggested, "Would you do it for a 7th round pick?" And I'm saying, "Of course I would do it for a 7th round pick," kind of thing. And it was just an interesting kind of a
Sure.
back and forth exchange on that, because normally he's coming to me, I thought, with a low offer on this because he knows how negative I am on acquiring veterans. That's not what this is. This is acquiring a guy in his rookie deal and
For value. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd be thrilled with the 5th if they could land him. He'd be a really nice piece to the receiver room.
Yeah. All right.
You want to talk about a couple of these candidates?
Sure.
So just some news. I mean, Matt Nagy's out in Kansas City. Eric Bieniemy's now their offensive coordinator. So I don't think he even has a job at all. Brian Flores has re-upped with
we assume let's hit everything about these guys as we go, because I don't want to kind of retract, but we're not assuming Matt Nagy's had his first interview. I'm not anticipating a second for the Ravens.
No.
Okay.
Out of all the interviews, probably Nagy and the Rizzi are the two most questionable to me.
Okay.
Brian Flores has re-upped to be the defensive coordinator in Minnesota, but that will not preclude him from taking a head coach job. Still a little bit interesting, though. It would preclude him now from taking a defensive coordinator job.
Not interested in him as a head coach. I think there's too much baggage that comes along with him, and there's too much history of failing to work well with the people who are with him.
Right. But he probably would have been my top choice out of all of the defensive coordinator only choices, and now he's not available. Let's see. One thing I want to mention about Davis Webb and Nathan Shieldhouse that, well, I know a lot of people are excited about them, and I'm intrigued by them as well, for sure. But neither of them have play calling experience at any level. I originally thought Shieldhouse had play calling experience at Iowa State under Matt Campbell, but apparently that was not the case. And Webb, I mean, he's only been coaching for a couple years. So coming from a perspective that I prefer a play caller, that does kind of give me a little bit of a pause on those two.
Okay, and neither of them is a head coaching candidate under any reasonable circumstances. Both of them are OC candidates, though.
I've heard some folks say that they think Shieldhouse could be a head coach, and apparently he's number 2 in the betting markets to become Pittsburgh's next head coach. So there might be a little bit of, those two. And then Shula is the betting favorite in Pittsburgh, and he's a guy I'm really intrigued by. He's in my top 3.
Right.
So I really do hope I would, if the Ravens don't hire him, I hope he does not go to Pittsburgh. I hope Pittsburgh ends up with McCarthy or somebody else that doesn't have a whole lot of ceiling to him.
Right. I would say Shula right now is 5th for me. So with Saleh out, Shula's moved into the top 5. So I am excited about him. He's the only one of the more recent people that I'm really super interested in for the head coach role. He's 39. He's not green as hell in terms of that. His experience is on the defensive side. So that is a question. In some ways, part of the problem is, I think right now I'd say Minter is the better choice of the two. And so I wouldn't take him. I would take Minter over Shula. And so now first of all, I don't see a world where Shula takes over as the DC, but that would be really interesting to have Shula and Minter on the same staff. You'd probably get some great arguments late into the night between those two.
Well, lateral move again. That'd be another lateral move for Shula. I'm not against the defense. Well, I guess we have a question about that, don't we?
Yeah.
I'll save that for the question.
Okay.
But so those are just some thoughts I had. We're diving into these candidates a little bit more. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Joe Brady since he's on his second interview as we speak.
Yep. That second interview is today. I'm really not excited about him as a candidate. As for the head coaching role, I know that offensive coordinator is typically a lot of people want that, and now the options are becoming more limited in terms of that. But you have Kubiak and Kingsbury. I'd put both of them ahead of him. I'd really love to see Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator. I think he just got fired as an offensive coordinator. Frankly, it just seems like that would be his best next move, probably.
I mean, I agree with you. We have a list of 17 candidates or 16
Mhm.
candidates, and the only ones who play calling experience: Kubiak, Kingsbury, McDaniel, and on the offensive side, that's it, right? Am I missing one?
Joe Brady.
Brady, yes.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, that's it.
so you are running a little thin there. So I agree with you that Brady would not be high on my list. He's outside my top 5 of head coach, but I'd be perfectly happy with him as offensive coordinator. I think he has some of the vertical elements coupled with the RPO game from Allen that could suit Lamar pretty well.
Okay. And so in the case of Brady, our assumption would be that he'd likely be out in Buffalo with the new coach they hired there. But it's
I
not
think so.
necessarily. If he has a good
Yeah.
relationship with Josh Allen, he may actually get protected by that.
Well, he's apparently one of the favorites to land that head coach job somehow. Him and Brian Daboll, they're going to bring all their offensive coordinators back and see who's going to be the new head coach. So, like we said, it's a very fluid situation this week.
Just that Buffalo situation is. I'm just going to say I'll be really happy to watch that thing crumble. I will just be. It will be amusing as hell.
Now,
Right.
New England's going to have that division for the next couple of years, I think. They did a nice job. Their GM did a nice job filling in pieces. I noticed that watching the game last week.
So we got a few other names that are getting some traction here. One is Jim Schwartz as potentially coming back. Now, reportedly, he's in the discussion also for the Cleveland job. But
Yes.
is he anywhere near your? Well, okay, I don't want to say anywhere near your top 5. I have excluded because he's 59 years old. But
Yeah, he's DC only for me. DC only,
DC
not
only.
head coach. Yeah,
okay. He's a Baltimore guy. Yeah. So
yeah. A lot of these DCs are doing more with less, and Schwartz didn't necessarily do that. Shula has a few pieces.
great point.
And Minter, who we should definitely spend some time talking about, because yesterday when he was interviewing on Wednesday, we should date this here because we're recording at almost 5:00 on Thursday the 22nd, because who knows what could happen before we record next. But he became such a favorite online. He was over 90 some percent, and then they pulled it, so you couldn't even. They took it off the board. So it's at one point on Wednesday evening, it seemed that he was right about to get hired. And
are you talking about like a Kalshi or a
yeah.
Okay? Because I don't know why they would ever pull anything, because you're just competing against other people who are making an offer on that eventuality.
So you're betting other people with that one? I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with Kalshi.
Okay, so I think these places all work the same way. Basically, these prop markets is that they you basically put out a limit order on what you're willing to buy at on either side of the equation. And sometimes you actually can see what the limit orders are. And it's funny. Limit orders, some people may know what they mean, but it goes in, it's so far permeated in our existence right now. It's all over regular market, stock market, everything like that. It's based on limit orders. And when you hear about spread and the round trip price of acquiring and then divesting yourself of stock at a later point, it's that spread is the round trip price you pay to trade in and out of the stock. And it might be as much as it might be as much as 50 cents on some stocks, but most of the time it's like a 16th or an eighth on something, things that are traded a lot of. And that is one of the risks of the smaller you trade, the more you pay in round trip costs. It has the same thing as going on with Kalshi. You'll have a yes and a no side of that equation. And because those markets are much less liquid, there's more distance between those two prices. And that's why it doesn't really make sense to me. There had to be, if it was off the board, what it means is there are no limit offers at him at any price, that would surprise the hell out of me.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So anyway, thoughts on Minter? Top line thoughts on Minter?
I mean, I like Minter. I think, what he's done in terms of the Michigan job again is impressive. I mean, he's had 2 fantastic years as the Michigan defensive coordinator. And his 2 years with the Chargers, the 24 and 25 seasons, were big improvement for the Chargers defense. They big jump up in DeVoe both years. They improved the second year, even though they dropped in the rankings, which is a little weird, but still, overall, very good performance from him the last 2 years. I'd be thrilled to have him as head coach with a good offensive mind underneath him as the OC. Yeah.
Those are my thoughts exactly. He's a schemer. He's probably going to call plays. I think who went to Ulbrich, he announced today he was going to call plays for Miami, right? The guy that went to Miami, but he engineered a renaissance in Odafe Owe's season, and I think he has the recent collegiate experience is a plus because he can probably has a better network of assistants that the Harbaugh brothers might not quite have because he spent a little bit of time at Vanderbilt, I believe. And again, I'd be more than happy with him. He's in my top 3, no question. You got to pair him with a good offensive coordinator. And apparently the coordinator that the players want, both Lamar and the receivers, is Kingsbury.
Yeah, I've heard that. And apparently Lamar is participating in these interviews, which is also an interesting thing to see that. And I'm fine if Kingsbury is the guy. He was in my top 5 before, so I would have him there. He's Coach Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. It is a big feather in his cap in terms of development. Working with Daniels is a lot of similarity. So I understand, and I understand why he might be favored by Jackson. At least I think I understand why he might be favored by Jackson, given his work with Daniels.
Apparently, it's good reviews from Hollywood Brown when he was with the Cardinals.
Huh.
They got word back to Lamar. Obviously, they're probably still pretty close friends. So that was one of the connections there.
All right. How about we move on to the mailbag and we'll talk about some things. I think we hit on every second interview. Anthony Weaver did have his second interview. He's not out of the running from my perspective, but I think that it becomes less likely with Minter canceling in Cleveland today. He canceled his interview in Cleveland today. That Weaver is the guy they're looking at as their first choice. But it could be they lose Minter, and Weaver is a guy that they have as a fallback, much in the way it happened 18 years ago with Garrett and Harbaugh.
Weaver be behind Shula on defense side for me, just because when he was a play caller, his defenses were middling.
I buy that.
Houston and Miami, he wasn't doing more with less necessarily like Shula has.
Okay, I'll buy that. Let's go to the mailbag. Got a question from James Cunningham. He says, with Harbaugh going to the Giants, does his spot on the competition committee go with him, or can the Ravens get new representation? Outstanding question, by the way. I don't know the answer. I really want the Ravens to have representation. And the same question could be asked of Tomlin, who's on that committee.
Yeah, I kind of assume that John keeps it. I don't know. But again, I don't know the answer. But he's, that's kind of the steward of the game type of thing. That's John's lane. So, good question for sure.
One thing I want to point out is that the Bengals, because the Ravens and the Steelers both had representation on the competition committee, the Bengals pushed to have a person included as well. And I want to say it's a woman who's on the competition committee who represents the Bengals. It might be from the Brown family directly, but I don't remember exactly who it is. But they got someone in there. And I wonder if that really serves the purpose that they're hoping for it to, or if the personalities of Tomlin and Harbaugh were just so loud.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys would be talking over the whole room, I would think. Then the other question I had is, we had this whole sideline incident with Jacoby Jones, and both Harbaugh, and that was now 13 years ago, right? 2013 it occurred on the Thanksgiving game on the sideline. Yep. I thought at that exact moment that Tomlin should have lost his competition committee spot for that. It did not make any sense to me that he should have still been on the competition committee after that. Can't make the rules if you can't play by them.
Yeah, that's very fair point. Very fair point. I hated Tomlin for so long, but the last couple of years, I kind of the worm turned a little bit. That was the one, man, with the smile afterwards. That was the one that's just stuck in my craw, smiling about it.
Yeah, and you don't know why he was doing it, and he's probably saying, I realized I made a mistake, kind of thing. I'll tell you about some off air. I'll tell you about some other incident that happened to me once that might be interesting. Okay. But let's talk about the next question here.
All right, this is from King Khalid. Starting to lean on the side of a defensive head coach play caller to fix our defense with a bright young OC. If you look back the last 2 seasons, our defense has let us down tremendously, can't get stops in big moments, can't generate pressure outside of sim packages, loose bracket coverage. As long as EDC fixes our O-line, offense should be fine. It's a defense that we need to get back. Thoughts?
Loose bracket coverage is a term I think I've coined originally, but I don't remember picking it up from somebody else. That's a method of a safety to play for the interception.
I think he
over the
means
ball.
soft coverage. I think he
Okay.
means soft man.
Let's assume he means that, because loose bracket coverage, I'm in favor of that. He's right about it's been difficult for them to generate pressure at all this year. Sim packages probably have been slightly more effective than other things, but the general problem has been that they haven't gotten nearly enough pressure, and the secondary has suffered because of it. Pass rush and coverage are tied together like pitching and fielding in baseball. That's very hard to separate. But I'm still agnostic on an offensive or defensive head coach, but it does seem like there are probably the number one guy in terms of Minter, since he is a defensive guy. I don't have a problem with that, but I wouldn't have a problem if it were Kubiak either. That was the guy.
So in an ideal world, I would prefer an offensive guy. It's an offensive league at the end of the day. Offensive teams or offensive head coaches have won the majority of the Super Bowls, excluding Belichick, who had Brady for the last decade. And you have Lamar. So you want to maximize Lamar. But you can't force it just because you want an offensive guy to take a lesser candidate. A defensive play caller would be very beneficial, as King says here. Forcing punts, holding leads, getting takeaways, getting sacks. I mean, Minter and Shula would be great for that. And I think another benefit is that if you have a really forward-thinking, excellent technician, schemer on the defensive side, you can get away with less investment on the defensive side, as we've seen with a couple of these teams that advance in the playoffs. And that allows you to put more money on the offense. So if I had to pick, I'd say offensive play caller 1, defensive play caller 2, CEO style would be 3.
Okay, and you're CEO 3. I'm fairly agnostic to any of the 3, given the right situation. I was really excited about the possibility of Saleh primarily as a CEO head coach, but I do like Weaver. And Garnett said something interesting on Twitter. He said, as soon as he hears that somebody is a leader of men, which is exactly the terminology that I use to describe Weaver, he says he's disinterested in the guy because he usually says when you start with that, it's an indication that you don't have other positive qualities. So it's a wise thing that he's saying. He's making an inference from that. I hopefully the other element of wisdom that comes from being a leader of men is that you don't overvalue your own input on either side of the ball. And so you can, and the important thing, you keep your eyes on the field the whole time.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. There's benefits of both ways, but I do prefer, if you have a top-notch play caller, you have access to top-notch play caller A, and B, you have stability on one side if they're doing so. That's where I stand. Anyway,
well, if they could get Kubiak for that, then I've got no objection to it being an offensive style thing over a CEO. But if they're down a couple of candidates here and the top OCs are gone and the top DCs are gone, then I think Weaver would make a fine choice as a CEO head coach and bring in some of the younger guys to be the people that you plan to lose.
Yep.
All right, let's go with you, Cole, here. When considering coordinators for the head coach position, do you give consideration to whether the coordinator worked from the sideline or the booth? I don't. How do you feel about it?
I think it's an interesting question. Certainly the players the coaches on the sideline had more interaction with the players. And obviously all head coaches are on the sideline, even if they're calling plays. So is it a huge deciding factor? No. But is it something where you can kind of gauge how a play caller would be able to interact with the team during the play? I think it might be worth a little bit of consideration.
All right, I'm going to go through one thing that I want to have on a future episode, but the booth head coach does not have much more he's working with other than his specific viewpoint. Now, what he does is an enclosed space where he has a number of coaches around him, but they're extremely restricted in terms of the resources they can use. They have the same tablets. You get 12 in the booth, you get 16 on the sideline of the Surface Pro tablets. Those Surface Pro tablets, they only show you 2 plays. They show you, only 2 shots. They give you the pre-snap shot and a second after the shot. And they don't have anything else on them, as I am told. Okay. You cannot have any sort of a calculation device in the booth and that means you can't have your cell phone, with the exception of one computer is allowed loaded with Excel, but only with approved NFL programs. But effectively, the NFL has a guy in every booth. You'll see him occasionally when they shoot the offensive coordinator. There'll be a guy in an NFL hat or an NFL shirt. You'll notice him. He's there to ensure that the rules are followed. And and they have a lot of rules for if tablets go wrong in one room, then they have to take them away from the other. It's all pre-game, and if it happens, a whole bunch of things like that. But what the guys in the booth who have to make strategy decisions for NFL teams are working with a very limited set. They can try and make judgments before the game and say, under these circumstances, we're going to do it. But that precludes them from making good judgments necessarily about what if our offense is playing like crap and our defense looks great, or the other way around. They have to then go back to first principles and use what I would call decision tree mathematics. A lot of you will be familiar with that. You assume independence, and there's a 60% chance of this, a 70% chance of this, and so there's a 42% chance of both occurring. But they have to go back to basic decision tree math done by hand in the booth, because they're not. I mean, calculator's not allowed. So I would think, this is where I'm applying right now. Whatever NFL team wants me, I can do an unbelievable amount of math in my head that I would love to get an NFL booth and make myself available.
Yeah.
So.
Good information. I had no idea that was that specific, Ken. Very, very good. And if I was an owner of the NFL, I would hire you to my staff.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Angelov85. Hi, Ken and Voss. Assuming we re-sign Linderbaum, would you rather use number 14 draft pick on D-line to pair with Travis and sign a mid-level free agent while splurging at edge, or vice versa? Parentheses, spending more on D-line free agent while drafting edge. And Ange concludes, hearing the draft is weak in the trenches.
Okay, so it's not really the full set of options on the table here. So I think the Ravens may well go cheap at edge in some way, which means that, or on the line in some way, which might mean drafting a second round player at edge. They could. The most they could really go is a first round player on the defensive line, a second round player at edge, or vice versa. I don't think they can do any more than that. And I think if they did that, there's no way in hell they're going out to the free agent market and getting somebody. So,
yeah. Well, just based off of the big boards that I've seen so far, there's a better chance of landing an impact edge at 14 than D lineman, unless you're high on Peter Woods. Right, so Peter Woods is the Clemson guy. He had pretty mediocre pass rushing metrics. He had very good run stopping, but to me, you got to get a pass rusher if you're going to take a first round guy. I also wouldn't rule out cornerback and even wide receiver in the first round. So those will kind of be the positions as well as offensive line. But either way, I think all season as a whole, the interior of the offensive line and the pass rush are the two main priorities, and they probably both require a combination of veterans and draft picks.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just the point I was going to make there, is that even particularly if they don't re-sign Linderbaum, it'll be watching for the development of Emory Jones and hoping that works out. It might even be bringing back Falele on a very cheap deal to be a backup only. It'd be hoping for additional runway on Voorhees, who would no doubt be the starter. It'd be drafting another guard, and it'd be probably signing or guard or a center and signing the other position as a vet player that you bring in. So, I mean, it's complex. Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna take a good look at the guards that are pending UFAs, because I think signing a right guard might be a really big move.
They have the guy with the right length in there in Emory Jones. You don't want to give that a shot before.
Well, I'm just assuming. Well, I would think either way, either left guard or right guard. I know Emory played on the right side, but he played mostly left guard last year. Either way, I am kind of counting on him to be one of the solutions, but you still have two more spots with Linderbaum as a UFA. So, but I think, the one-off season when they went out and got Zeitler and the right tackle, who's New England's right tackle, Morgan Moses. Yeah. I do think they need one more vet on the O-line, pretty much either way. Even if they take an O-line in the first pick, I still would want one more vet unless you're bringing back Linderbaum.
Right. So you can live with Linderbaum, Jones, and either Voorhees or a rookie, plus some other depth they'd have to get with that. Okay.
I mean, I think I really would prefer to get a free agent guard if possible.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. And we already answered Angelov's questions. Thank you all. By the way, a lot of regular questioners here, and we want to make sure people are making use of hashtag Film Study Mailbag. Will Saunders has the last question. Hi, Ken and Voss. With the rumored Lamar interest with Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator, are you concerned with his sudden departure from the Commanders and how quickly they soured on him? So he's right. I mean, he's only there for 2 years. Great 24 with Daniels. And all of a sudden they got rid of him in 25 when Daniels was pretty much hurt a lot of the year.
Not only Daniels, their best receiver, Terry McLaurin, barely played. Their top running back, Eckler, missed most of the year. The other running back they found, Tchaikovsky Merritt, missed some time. They still finished pretty good as far as rushing without a whole lot going on. And I'm pretty excited about Kingsbury. I've always wanted to see Lamar in a more spread offense. I always thought that could really unleash his scrambling ability and just spread the field with more speed and not so many tight, condensed formations. So I'd be really excited about Kingsbury. You can't judge a coach on what they did somewhere else. I think the Baltimore Ravens have a way of elevating anybody, player or coach, when they're in our organization.
Right. I agree with that. They certainly did that with Roquan Smith. They've done it with a lot of other players as well. I want to go back to what you said about Lamar as a scrambler, because it is the big concern coming out of 25 into 26. Did a short video on this, but the number that I've looked at, the very disturbing Lamar statistic, because he had a 103.8 quarterback rating. It wasn't really his passing that was the issue this last year.
Right.
The 21-7, it doesn't, on the surface, is not great, but it's not too dissimilar to his MVP season. And the 103.8 is right in line with his career, so I'm fine with that. What was not good is he only rushed for 3.5 yards per play on designed runs. So that was, that's not Lamar Jackson. That's not him playing right. And that means say again.
He should be upwards of close to 10 on design runs, I would think.
The design runs are a little bit less than scrambles typically. Okay. And so his overall, if it's going to be, maybe 7.5 yards, he'd be maybe, 5.5, 6 yards on his design runs is fine. 3.5 is not. Okay. Yes. Anyway, the other part of this was forced not to pass. Now I combine scrambles and sacks together into what are the run results when he does not get a pass off. And Lamar in the past has put up some prodigious numbers. In his 2019 MVP season, he was at 5.6 yards when forced out to pass. And his sacks are included in that, along with his scrambles. Scrambled for almost 10 yards a play. Might have been over 10 yards a play, in fact, that year. And he got sacked 23 for 106 or something. So his sacks were only a little over 4 yards a play in terms of their cost. So 5.6 overall. I posit that is the best number of all time, but I don't have proof of it. I haven't been able to. I have to pull the numbers together from multiple sources. So this last year, career, Lamar's at 3.2 yards per FNTP, which is just outrageously good. Josh Allen is right in the same ballpark. Mahomes is behind him, although he's better in this last year. Drake May is a new up-and-comer in that category. So it's the best quarterbacks in the league who do all this. Last year, 2025, Lamar minus 0.3 yards FNTP. So he took more sacks, and he also did not really scramble as often or with as much effect. And that's something they really need to get unlocked again with health. Reduce the sacks for certain, but also increase the amount and effectiveness of those scrambles.
For sure. I saw I watched the 2025 Lamar highlight package with my kids over the weekend, and that Bills game, first half he looked great, and then that hit from Ed Oliver, whatever it was, and it was just an issue. But I just think long term you want to have the read option as a piece of your offense, but I don't think you want to have it designed that way so much. Lamar's really special sauce is, I think, as his career progresses and he gets in past his prime, is his improv, where he can break 3 tackles in the backfield and then make an amazing pass down the field. And the more guys you have in the route, the better your chances of accomplishing that are.
Okay, I'm fine with that, and that's why you're tying that back to the spread offense look that you want to see. Force the other team to defend more of the field, maybe only rush with 4. do that. And
Exactly.
I think the forcing the rush with 4 is something they did effectively this last year by coming up with some plays that beat the crowded line of scrimmage. And it took them a long time to really get that done. But against Cincinnati in the 24-0 win, they did a good job of it. 32-yard pass, seam route, right side to Hopkins, and then the 30-yard throw, same drive over to Ali to just beat a crowded line of scrimmage. Ali took it for 30 for the touchdown. They need
audible at the line, right? He audibled
yeah.
that one at the line.
Yeah, that's the thing they need to have, though, as components of the offense that they can react to, the Brian Flores zero blitz look that they face, from time to time in Lamar's career.
Yeah. So, overall, Ravens are undergoing a lot of change, but you can almost look at it like the new coaches come in as, you got your bachelor's degree in Todd Monken, and now let's go get our master's in Clint Kubiak or something like that, where you keep the foundation and the core and the principles that you've learned, but you can continue to make the next addition and make the next evolution.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, by the way, and it's one of the reasons why I like Minter as a choice and I like Weaver as a choice is they have some familiarity with the Ravens way. That's not like it's not out there on the film, but both those coaches understand. Minter was here for 4 years, and Weaver was, he's been here off and on for a whole bunch of time, right, in total. But they both understand how the Ravens can win offensively at some level. And if they're in the head coach role, then I think that it's going to be an evolution, a layering on top of what does Lamar already do well rather than a restart. And I am a little concerned about a complete regime change for that reason.
I think out of all the assistant coaches on the whole staff, T. Martin might be the one most important to retain. Because he has a great rapport with Lamar, and he certainly knows all these concepts that work so well for all these last 8 years. Yep.
Yeah. If they can retain him, that'd be good. Has he been denied interviews for?
We haven't seen. I saw the first report that Horton was blocked, and then I put out a feeler, and I just didn't hear anything else back. The only thing I gathered was that Jeff said they were blocking some of the young defensive guys.
All right. Vas, always a pleasure doing this show with you. A great discussion today, and boy, we've been busy so far this offseason. No weeks off. In terms of this, at some point, we're probably going to have some two week breaks once things settle down. But for right now, I think we need to stay right here on a weekly basis.
Really enjoying it, Ken. Hopefully next week we have a head coaching hire.
It could be, and if it's not, please understand the patience required for this, as Vas pointed out earlier. Vas, tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
I'm on Twitter X at Vasilis Lurikos, VASILISLERIKOS.
All right. Outstanding. I learned some things about the name, way his name is spelled. You can ask him those on Twitter yourself. And keep the questions coming at #FilmStudy Mailbag. Really appreciate all the loyalty to our viewers. And for Vas Lurikos, this is Ken McKusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Friday Morning GM.